I'm happy to be back on our V-bottom project here. We've had a number of other things to do along the way, but you know, we've been after it here, and we've got some of the longitudinal stringers on it. The web that I was talking about between the keelson and the sole planking, we've got that installed. And now we've got on the starboard side, we've got the intermediate one installed, and we've also clipped it off on the proper angle and everything to accept the planking. So we wanted to show you exactly kind of how we did it right over here on this side. We've got this one fit to the sole planking with just a simple scribe, and I can even show you how we did that. And then I've got a marking gauge. I want to show you how we use that to get the height of it right. We're only going to cut it 90 degrees, even though it's got quite a bevel on it. We're going to use the electric plane again to achieve that bevel, just like we're doing every time. And then later on, we're actually going to put a piece of oak on top of the stringer that extends out and cuts this span in half, so it'll come out and come right about into here. So it'll be fastened down on top of that stringer. And then also, we're going to put another piece of wood between the stem, the heel end of the stem, and the forward end of the keelson, and right down on top of this. So it's going to have like a lapped over piece in there. Now, you know, lots of boats like this would just have a butt joint, just a simple butt joint between the stem and the keelson, and then a piece of over it, like a, you know, like it's kind of like a butt block and bolt it together. Well, you know, this one's going to have the butt block bolted together. It's going to be all screwed right through the plank and right through the joints, up in this direction. I mean, I think that joint right there is pretty much going to be impossible to ever move it or have any problems with it. So it's a little bit different, but we're turning most everything on this boat into scarfs if we can, because scarfs are so easy to do these days with electric planes. It never used to be that easy to do. It would be lots of work, so people avoided scarfs. Well, scarfs today are so simple that we make the best use of them. So that's kind of what we're up to. Well, we've got our next longitudinal stringer scribed to fit the sole planking. We just propped it up on both ends with a little shim, and I took a block of wood and a pencil and drew a scribe line right down there, and we took it off and cut it with a skill saw. We touched it up a tiny bit with a plane, but very, very little actually. It came out really nice. So we've got it back up in position, fitting right down against the sole planking. And the next thing for us to do is to determine the height of it. Now, it would be a little bit difficult to try to figure that out from drawings or from any way. So what we've done is we've made this little marking gauge. Now, it's just a piece of scrap plywood. I've cut an aperture out of it here to reach over the top of this stringer because the thing is so much higher than we need it to be. So we just rest it on the keelson and rest it on the chine log area, slide it over till it touches on the inboard side, and reach right around with a pencil and make a little mark right under there, like that, and a little trailer on it so we know where it is. Now we're just going to slide it along and make a mark, say every 16 inches or so. And then we're going to connect up the marks and cut this line at 90 degrees with a skill saw on the bench. These longitudinal stringers are made out of southern yellow pine. They're actually OSHA staging planks is what they are. And it's pretty good wood. You know, it's nice and clear and it's dry. And you know, it's something that I wanted to use. I didn't want to use oak because it would have been awfully heavy. I'm ripping it down right now with a skill saw, but you know, I haven't tacked a batten or done anything like that at this point. You know, I just figured, well, I'm at the right height, the situation is right, I'll just follow the line, which I'm doing, and you know, you have to just kind of go very slowly and keep your head in front of the saw, and I'm using my left hand kind of as a guide going along the edge of the saw, although, you know, I have to creep my fingers in or out as I go along because it's not a perfectly straight rip, but you can still use your fingers as kind of an adjustable guide as you go along, you know. And obviously, as close as I'm going to get it to that line and as straight as I think it's going to be, what I do know it's going to be is 90 degrees because the skill saw controls that. So, you know, maybe it's a little bit wavy. I'll stand it up on edge and take a plane and flatten it right out. Now I'm drilling a few holes in each one of these sole planks from the outside in, actually, so that I can place the stringer in place and not get confused inside about where I'm going to drill. You know, all the holes will be there. You just have to be kind of careful with the drill bit. You're going to use something very small and push it through kind of slowly, because otherwise you could blast a little bit of material out the other side, but it doesn't happen too often. The only real trick here is to get the screw holes at 90 degrees to the surface. If you're not careful, you think you're drilling them at 90 degrees, but when you go to check it out later on, you find out they're nowhere near 90 degrees. So that is probably the most difficult part of drilling these holes in rapid succession like this, is getting them at that right angle. Just like that. We're applying a little tiny bit of polysulfide to the end grain of the stringer where it butts up to the transom, really for no other reason than to kind of seal it up, seal the end grain up. And you know, some people would probably think, well, you're not bedding it down the full length of the sole. Well, no, I'm not, because the sole is going to swell up so tight, and I don't want any glue or any kind of seal or anything getting up between the sole planks. Slam it up against that block like that. Just right there. Now give it a tap towards aft here. Oh yeah, that squashed it right up there. That's perfect. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to drill a hole through the transom into the end grain of the stringer, but I'm not going to let it go directly straight into the end grain. I've got it kind of turned up on a little angle there so it'll pass some of the grain in the stringer and hold a little bit better. But it's quite a large screw, and I've countersunk for the head a little bit. Now I'm just going to wind it in with a bit brace. But there's a little story behind these screws right here. These are things that are like 4-inch number 18 wood screws that were picked up from the floor in 1963 when we were building American Eagle at Luda's in Connecticut, in Stamford, Connecticut. And it's a funny story because back then screws were so reasonably priced that if a shipwright would have dropped one on the floor, it was against the rules for him to pick it back up. It stayed there. And the scavengers came in afterwards and picked that all up, i.e. myself and my father, actually. And that's where those screws came from, actually. It's an incredible story. I've had them, and I use them periodically here and there. And, there was quite a few of them. There wasn't just a small amount of screws that we collected. There was a lot of them, and it was legal. Caleb's up top making sure that that stringer is right on the line or between the two lines that we drew there so that the screws get right up into it properly. And I'm down below driving these screws overhead. Well, as I'm putting these screws in up underneath here, up into the stringers, I'm just noticing it's pretty nice under here. I haven't been under here before really very much. It looks pretty. It looks just like a skiff looks inside. The sole looks just like a skiff. And the chine logs, the way the frames connect to the chine logs, all that stuff. This is a skiff the way I remember it right here. Now these are 2.5 number 12 bronze screws. We're driving them overhead here. It may seem a little bit tricky. They're straight slot screws like every other screw I drive, but you just have to concentrate, line that bit up with the screw as it first starts going in so you're not crooked with the screw, and increase the pressure as you go. And in order to increase the pressure here, I'm pushing against the floor, so it's a little bit strenuous, but I can do it no problem. It's just I don't want to do every one of them like this. That is all. One electric plane and an electric cord. I had cut the stringer out to 90 degrees, and I did that just because it was convenient and it was easy and it was quick. I mean, I could have lifted bevels and cut it to a progressive bevel, either on a table saw or with my skill saw or with a bandsaw, but it was right here. It's just too easy to cut it at 90 degrees, and the electric plane just does a great job dubbing it down. So I'm just going to dub it to the proper angle. I started at the bow end of this stringer, whittling it down to shape, and that's the way to go because I've got the most material to take off up there. And once I've got it down very close to the line, I can keep the heel end of my plane on the work I've already done. And then I just work my way along, really. I'm not trying to get it perfect, but I'm trying to get as close as I can, keeping my heel down. And I can feel the plane as it goes along and twists a tiny bit. You know, as I push it, it does not stay on the same angle. I don't want it to. What I want it to do is change angle as I go along a little bit. And as long as you have a platform to start from, it gives you an idea on what angle that plane is on. If it was teetering on a corner or something like that, that would be a little bit more difficult for me. I'd have to have two hands on the plane. But the way I'm attacking this right here is I'm shooting off the flat surface that I've already planed onto a surface that I haven't planed. Now, as I place my gauge down, I'm using my left hand to hold the gauge, obviously, and it's outboard of the stringer that I'm working on. So when I place it down, the most convenient thing to do really is to land it against the chine and land it against the stringer that I'm working on, and then take a peek up near the keel and see how much space is up there. You know, if I got a ½ an inch of space up there, I only have to take a1/4 of an inch off of that stringer to accomplish that. So you got to be careful that you don't think you've got a massive amount of wood to go, because you really don't. You sneak up on it pretty quickly, believe me. It's a matter of making decisions very quickly, because at some points I have to stroke, you know, away some wood on one side of that stringer, and maybe in the next stroke I'm taking some from the other side. So it's, you know, it's a matter of collecting your information as fast as you can and getting your right hand to do what your left hand said you're supposed to do. That's basically it. At this point, we've got our 3 longitudinal stringers in it. One I call the web, that extends from the keelson right down to the bottom of the boat, or down to the sole, and these 2 intermediates, which are halfway between. Now, back aft on these, I've got them parallel in the center line, because if we ever wanted to put like a console in it or something like that, I think it would be advantageous if those stringers would parallel the center line, because more than likely any kind of console or something you put in would be a rectangle, and you can fasten it down from inside into these. So that's why they're placed there. Up forward, it wasn't quite so convenient, because they were quite a ways out here, and they would have run out like down in here. That wouldn't work for me. So what I did was I bent the forward sections of them inboard like this, and the idea is to get it to point towards right about in here. So that's what we're up to. Eventually we're going to put, or very shortly, we're going to put on an extension on top of this, but a bent and twisted piece. This piece was fashioned. This piece is going to be bent and twisted in place. Now, in order to do that, we've had to put some little braces from the chine log to the keel here, because otherwise we'd have no way to twist this piece in. And we've made these pieces, they're quite stiff and strong, and it'll facilitate being able to bend this piece in. So that's our next move, really. Now, a man asked me in a comment whether or not a boat like this, the same shape as this, could be built in a traditional manner. And the answer is yes, it could be. It could be cross-planked like this in a traditional manner with full thickness planking and caulked in between. You know, Crosby stripers are a similar shape to this, a V-bottom boat. They're planked longitudinally, but the planking would have to have quite a bit of twist in it up forward here. And it's the same thing with this planking, the cross-planked like this. This planking would have a tremendous amount of twist in it. And a 2x4, look what happens when I try to put a 2x4 on there. Look at it rocking like that, because it won't lay down on the chine and the stem at the same time. I have to cut that to a twist in order to make that fit, and I'm going to show you how that's done. Now, like I said, if you tried to plank a boat like this with full thickness planking up forward here, you're not going to twist them on there. They're not going to stay down there. The fastenings, everything would be under such a strain, it just isn't going to stay together. So you would have to cut the pieces to a twist. And it's quite a short piece. It's quite a twist in that length of wood. So I'm going to show you exactly how it's done. I'm going to lay the piece on there. I'm going to make sure that it's bearing right against the chine log like that. So it's not bearing on the stem on this side, it is on this side. So I can't twist that piece down. If I did, it wouldn't bear on the chine log anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a twist in it. The first thing I have to do is just measure that space right there. It's just above a ½ an inch, between 9/16 and a ½ an inch. So I'm just going to put my rule right over here and put a mark right there. Now, I'm just going to take this piece over and connect that mark up with a straight line. Take a pencil and just draw a line right down through there like that. And now I'm going to take it to the bandsaw here and cut it to that line. This is going to be a little different kind of fence than maybe you've normally seen. You know, I've never seen anybody else do this, but I'm putting a fence on there that's cut at 45 degrees and sneaking it right up to the blade. I'm going to put my piece of wood that I'm going to cut on there right in that corner, and the idea is that I don't have to keep track of that corner, but I'm not cutting anything off of it either. You know, I'm just keeping the blade at the corner of the piece of wood that I'm cutting with that fence. That's what I'm doing. And I'm following the line on the other side. So I have no need to know the degrees. You know, I don't need to change the angle of the table as I cut or anything like that. I don't need anybody to help me or do anything like that. I just pick the piece up, follow the line on one side, and the fence is following the corner of the lumber on the other side, and I get this progressive twist in it when the cut is complete. Well, now here's the piece we just cut, and really it was cut for just demonstration purposes. I don't need to put a piece right here, but I am going to add 2 more pieces right back in here. So look how nicely that thing fits. Bears right on the stem, perfect, right on the chine, perfect. That's the way you do it right there. But like I said, if you were going to plank a boat like this with 1 thickness of planking, this is pretty much what you'd have to do right here. If you tried to twist it on, I think you'd end up with all kinds of problems. It's not something I would even try to do. I know better. You know, if I was going to steam planking and all those kinds of things, that's all fine. That all can be done. But there's compromises. If I steam planks, I can't glue them. Right? I'd have to clamp it on, let it dry, all these different things. We're building this kind of composite with fiberglass and with glues and different things like that. It's the choice that we made, and we're sticking with it. So now I want to just show you what these things are all about. Why did I put these on here? It's so that I can extend that stringer aft of me there with a piece that would go in there just like that. Now it's going to bear up against these braces right here, but you can see it doesn't bear right here. See the massive gap behind it? Because, like I said, if you were going to plank a boat like this longitudinally or put this stringer in, it's going to have to be twisted like that. So that is what those are about. We're going to put this piece in, it's going to bear up against there, and then we're going to start planking right over it and removing these as we go.